By the time this movie came out, Pat Boone was already a big music star, but this kind of put him in another level in his entertainment career. Now, today we'll be talking about a very beloved movie that's probably one of the best 20th Century Fox sci-fi movies of that era, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Came out in 1959. Now, based on Jules Verne's story, it was also called Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth. Now, it came out again in 59 with beautiful color by Deluxe, distributed by 20th Century Fox. The film, produced by Charles Brackett, was directed by Henry Levin, starred the very, very talented James Mason, Mr. Boone, and Arlene Dahl. Bernard Herrmann of Twilight Zone fame wrote the film score, and the film storyline was adapted by Brackett from the 1864 novel of the same name. Now, again, Walter Reich also held up on the script. Cinematography by Leo Tover, edited by Stuart Gilmore and Jack W. Holmes. Again, production company included Boone's own Kugamuga Productions Incorporated, Joseph M. Schneck Enterprises. The release at Christmas, December of 59, 125 minutes, with a budget of $3.4 million, was a big box office hit, made him well over $10 million. Now, in the movie, in 1880 Edinburgh, Professor Sir Oliver Lindenbrook, a geologist at the University of Edinburgh, is given a piece of volcanic rock by his admiring student, Alex McQuan, who is in love with Lindenbrook's niece, Jenny. Finding a rock unusually heavy, Lindenbrook discovers a plumb bob inside, bearing a cryptic inscription. Lindenbrook and Alex discovered that it was left by a scientist named Amy Saknussemm, who had almost 300 years earlier had found a passage to the center of the earth by descending into the volcano Stavfellsjökull in western Iceland. After translating the message, Lindenbrook immediately sets off with Alex to follow in the Icelandic pioneer's footsteps. Now, Professor Gutenberg, upon receiving correspondence from Lindenbrook regarding the message, attempts to reach the Earth's center first. Lindenbrook and McQueen chase him to Iceland. There, Gutenberg and his assistant kidnap and imprison him in a cellar. They are freed by local Hans Biekel and his pet duck Gertrude. They later find Gutenberg dead in his hotel room. Lindenbrook finds potassium cyanide crystals in Gutenberg's goatee and concludes that he was murdered. Now, Gutenberg's widow, Carla, who initially believed Lindenbrook was trying to capitalize on her deceased husband's work, learns the truth. She provides the equipment and supplies that her husband had accumulated, including much sought after Ruhmkorff lamps, but only on the condition that she accompanies them to protect her husband's reputation. Lindenbrook grudgingly agrees, and Hans and Gertrude also join the new expedition. Now, on a specific date, now this is a big plot point, of course, they mark the sunrise exact location on Snellsjökull and descend into the earth from there, following the markings left by Saknussemm. However, they are not alone. Goldberg's murderer, Count Saknussemm, believes that as Saknussemm's descendant, only he has the right to be there. He and his manservant trail the group secretly. When Alex becomes separated from the others, he comes upon Saknussemm. When Alex refuses to take the place of Saknussemm's servant, who has died from overexertion, Saknussemm shoots Alex in the arm. Lindenbrook locates them through the gunshot's echoes, and after a quick trial for murder, sentences him to death. No one is willing to execute him, however, so they reluctantly take him along. Now, the explorers eventually come upon a subterranean ocean, which are great effects, of course, in this scene. They construct a raft across it, but not before narrowly escaping a family of large Dimetrodons. The raft begins circling in a large mid-ocean whirlpool, a very effective scene, of course. The professor deduces that this must be the center of the Earth. The magnetic forces of north and south meet there and are powerful enough to snatch away even the gold in their rings and tooth fillings. Now completely exhausted, they reach the opposite shore. We'll talk about the scene a little bit later, almost to kill one of the participants. Now, when the others are asleep, a hungry Saknussemm catches and eats Gertrude. Bad for the duck. When Hans finds out, he rushes at the Count. Reeling back, he inadvertently loosens a column of large stones and is buried beneath them, killing him, dead by duck. Right before the collapse, the group comes upon the ruins of the sunken city of Atlantis. What a shock. Now, the Again, they also find the skeleton of Arnie Saknussemm, whose right hand points towards a volcanic chimney. Bad good direction. While a strong updraft suggests it leads directly to the surface, a huge rock partially blocks the way. Lyndon Brooke decides to blow up the obstruction with gunpowder left by Saknussemm, and they take shelter in a large sacrificial altar bowl. Then a giant lizard attacks, but is buried under molten lava released by the explosion. The bowl floats towards the passage, and is finally driven upward at great speed by a lava plume. It finally reaches the surface, where the explorers are ejected, coming down away from the lava eruption. When they return to Edinburgh, they are hailed as heroes. Lindenbrook turns out all the honors due to the loss of their documented evidence, but encourages the next generations to follow in their footsteps. Alex soon marries Jenny, and Lindenbrook and Carla kiss, a pledge of their upcoming wedding. Now, again, James Mason, Pat Boone, Arlene Dahl, the great Diane Baker, Peter Ronson, Taylor David, Bob Adler as the groom, Alan Napier, Ivan Tissot, and Alex Finlayson as the main actors. Now, the film was a co-production between 20th Century Fox and Joseph M. Schlecht, who had been instrumental in helping establish Fox in 1935. The film was produced by Charles Brackett, who said, "Our picture describes action events with not the slightest shadow of Freud. The serious thing about Jules Verne is that all he does is tell a story in exciting episodes. But his stories have always been pushed man a little closer towards the unknown. What we try to do is retell the story in the best way of all, in the Verne vernacular." Now, interestingly, Brackett called the original story a delightful book written for young people. "We simply couldn't have any solemnity about it. I wanted very much to do it all this time. I'm tired of all these things based on thoughts at the back of sick minds." The script was written by Walter Reich, who later said, "I had written a lot of science fiction for magazines, and Charles Brackett knew about that. He also knew that I had written magazine articles on Jules Verne. I had studied Verne and always wanted to write his biography, but I never got around to doing it. When he bought the Jules Verne novel from the estate to sign me, I was delighted." Now, Pat Boone was the first star for the movie announced. He said he was reluctant to make the film because it was science fiction, even after Fox promised to add some songs. It was only when they offered him 15% of the profits that he agreed at the urging of his management. He said, "Later on, I was glad I did it because it was fun to do. I had some good music and it became a very successful film." Now, interesting what Diabolique said later on about Pat Boone, I tend to agree. It remains a mystery why Boone never appeared in another fantasy sci-fi adventure in his entire career. He was believable in them, and he could easily sing a song over the credits if he wanted. He wouldn't have to worry about kissing any of his co-stars or morality issues. And it wasn't as though Fox weren't making them. When he was under contract, he turned out The Lost World, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and 5 Weeks in a Balloon. The last two even feature pop stars, Frankie Avalon and Fabian, respectively, but no Pat Boone. Was he too expensive? Did the dates not work out? Do you insist on playing the lead? Whatever the reason, it was a great shame. For me, this is the biggest miss that Boone made in his entire career. Now, the role of the professor was meant to be played by Clifton Webb. He said that was the most beautiful idea, according to Reich, as Webb had a certain tongue-in-cheek style, but it didn't work out. He had to undergo major surgery before production. It was a double hernia, and he wasn't available. Now, Webb was replaced at the last minute by Mason, who had previously appeared as Captain Nemo in Jules Verne's novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Now, some of the underground sequences for the movie were filmed at Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Other shooting locations included points in California as well as in Edinburgh. Principal photography took place from late June to mid-September 1959. Now, at one point, Life magazine editor and science writer Lincoln Barnett was the write the screenplay and later acted as one of the technical advisors on the film. Now, the giant diamond troodon depicted at the center of the Earth action sequence was actually rhinoceros iguanas with a large glued-on makeup appliance added to their back. The giant chameleon seen later in the ruins of Atlantis scene was actually a painted Tego lizard. And there's many stories that came from the set, ladies and gentlemen, and one of them, of course, was the infamous Whirlpool sea scene, where a lot of people went to the movie. They said it was one of the best and was well put together. Now, according to Boone, James Mason, Arlene Dahl, Peter Ronson, and I were on a raft caught in a giant whirlpool. It was a tricky thing to shoot. The raft was on a revolving platform that tilted when it went around. It had to look like we were being tossed violently. Hundreds of gallons of water were being dumped on us to simulate a stormy sea. The noise was deafening, but not enough to drown out Dahl, who started screaming as she held on for dear life. She screamed at the director, Henry Levin, "Get me off this thing, get me down, I'm going to pass out." She kept yelling. Mason had little patience for it. He thought Dahl was already overplayed in the role of a dainty creature when we had to wear very heavy parkas, feigning winter amid very hot July weather, and for another scene, Dahl complained then of heat prostration. Mason was not amused at this time, and he yelled back at her, "Shut up, woman! We're going to have to do this 10 times if you don't keep quiet. We're going to have to dub dialogue anyway," and he got the shot. However, Dahl eventually became unconscious, and it took 30 minutes to revive her. Now, at the time of his release, The Journey to the Center of the Earth was a financial success, taking $10 million to the box office and myriad more money since then. Now, the profit line, I think, for Boone was in the $1.7 and $2 million range, I think. I could be wrong. Now, a very, very important thing here. Film review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes assigns a rating of 84% to the movie based on 31 critics, with an average rating of 6.9 out of 10. The website's official consensus describes the movie as silly but fun, with everything you want from a sci-fi blockbuster: heroic characters, menacing villains, monsters, big sets, and special effects. Upon the film's release, New York Times film critic Bosley Crowther said the movie is really not very striking make-believe when all is said and done. The Earth's interior is somewhat on the order of an elaborate amusement park tunnel of love, and the attitudes of the people towards each other and toward another curious man who happens to be exploring down there at the same time are conventional and just a bit dull. Now, E. Nathan, writing a respected review for Empire, gave the film 4 stars, stating that it has dated a fair bit, but it's a film that takes its far-fetchedness seriously and delivers a thrilling adventure untrammeled by cheese, melodrama, or ludicrous tribes of extras, shabbily dressed bird beings, or lizard men, ultimately concluding that the film is still captivating despite the obviously dated effects. Now, what's ironic about this, Journey to the Center of the Earth won a second-place Golden Laurel Award for the top action drama for 1960. The film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards for Best Art Direction, Set Direction for Lyle L. Wheeler, Frank Bockelin, and Herman A. Blumenthal, Walter M. Scott, and Joseph Gish, for Best Effects, Special Effects, and for Best Song, the great Carlton W. Faulkner. Now, the comic book adaptation, you can find it was a Dell 4-color, number 1060, in November 1959. And a very, very collectible comic book for sure. I have not seen this movie, by the way, but a lot of people tell me they had a lot of fun, especially seeing somebody like Pat Boone, become a star in front of their eyes. James Mason, of course, very well-respected actor, big in Stars Born, different movies through the years. The Rommel movie as well. My God, what a good time that we had. 20th Century Fox were trying to battle Disney and the different movies, and they really hit it out of the park. And Jules Verne, my God, one of the best storytellers of all time. And it's funny when someone like him is nearly over 100 years past his time, we're still talking about him through a podcast on a computer that he kind of predicted, like special effects and computerization and all that. Jules Verne was always about seeing what was available in the future. A very, very respected person in science fiction and fantasy writing. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our vintage podcast and our tribute week to Pat Boone of all people, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or super chat. And don't forget, requests are always highly accepted and always highly considered. Thanks for listening. Bye.